If you feel like you have no control around trigger foods, the answer is not to avoid them. The answer is to diffuse the trigger. Now, the big thing that I talk about is building an eating plan around your preferences. Same with exercise. It's essentially instead of following a specific diet, insert your first name. It is the your name eating plan. It's based largely around your preferences, and that's where you start because it's easiest to stick with things that we actually enjoy doing. Um, but oftentimes, what I'll hear from people is they'll start naming out their foods that they call trigger foods. I can't eat pizza. I can't eat pizza every day. I can't eat cake every day. I can't eat donuts every day. And the argument that I will make, because when we're taking this approach, this is going to be your lifelong eating plan. Nothing is set in stone for life. Your preferences will naturally change as you go. But what you are going to do right off the bat, because again, we have no deadline on this, is I want you to figure out what your meal structure naturally is. Like, how many meals a day do you like to eat? Are you a 3 to 4 meal a day type person? Do you like 1 or 2 meals? Do you like a bunch of smaller meals spaced out? But once you figure out what your preference is, I want you to actually figure out a way to eat that big, nasty trigger food of yours. Triggers are meant to be diffused. And getting to the point where you say, this is why I don't have this particular food, or I can't have this, I can't have it in the house, I can't do that. What that tells me is that's the food we need to get control over as soon as we possibly can. Because think about these foods that you label trigger foods. You've been told you can't eat them. There's probably a lot of feelings and emotions around that, like guilt and shame, because you want to eat the food, but you can't. And you try to willpower your way against it. And then what usually ends up happening is eventually you do eat the food. And because it's been off limits and it's been so long since you've eaten it, and you have these feelings, you just start eating a lot of it. And then you feel guilt and shame. And like, then you tell yourself, like, well, this is why I can't eat it. Look, this is what happens. That's what happens when you try to restrict that food that you really actually do enjoy. If you, and what I've seen with people normally, this doesn't take a lot of time. If you say, okay, I'm going to eat this every single day, like this is a food that has such an emotional pull on you. You're like, I'm just going to eat it every day. I'm going to eat as much of it as I want. There's no restrictions. What happens? And you have to follow through and do it every single day. It's weird because like if people do what I've seen is if you do the cheat day or the cheat meal, like doing this once a week seems to be enough to keep it going. Like the thoughts and feelings are going to continue to be there. You're still going to, like when you eat it, because you've been looking forward to it, you've got this anticipation for it. Like you've been building this anticipation all week for this weekend or whatever, whenever your cheat day is, your cheat meal is. And then it just keeps the cycle up. But if I will tell you, if this food is not off limits to you and you eat it every single day, within let's say 2 weeks, I think it'll happen a lot sooner for you. It's going to start to lose its pull. And then eventually the goal is not for you to never eat this food because you clearly enjoy it. And I've got like there's foods that I enjoy that, like I go in phases with them. But at one point, these are things that I never thought that I could actually eat, with like at my own free will. I thought that I was powerless to them. But see, that's kind of that's actually the first misconception is when we hand over the power to the food companies, then we're giving up the control that we actually have, something we actually do have control over. Now, I mentioned the food companies. A lot of those processed and packaged foods are designed, tested, and retested to make sure that you're going to eat more of them than you plan to. Make sure that I eat more of them than I plan to. That's the game. But when you know the rules of the game, you don't internalize it as I'm just weak. I don't have the willpower to do it. So you know the rules of the game. Okay. So when that's how the food industry works. And when we go to like restaurants and stuff, it's kind of the same, right? Like the environment is designed to get you to eat more, buy more than you probably, if you had a plan going in, then what you plan to eat. It's the name of the game. But when we know what the rules are, we can dictate those. So I have plenty of foods that at one point, pizza was one, cookies was one, ice cream was one, carrot cake was one. And the way that I have gotten the reins on this stuff is one by one. And you pick the biggest one first. Might as well get the ugliest and the hairiest one out of the way. You eat it every day. Because think about this. You get control over this one food of yours that has been, like, I can't have it in the house. I can't eat it. And you're like, nah. You got your fork and your spoon in your hand. You're like, I'm going to show you who's in control, food. Bring it on, ice cream. Here we go. So, and you eat it. Now, what I like to do, because we can break a couple of bad habits right off the bat. So I would actually like you to, I mentioned meal frequency before. If you eat 3 to 4 meals a day, I want you to structure your meals around the way that you, again, food's around your preferences. You most likely have some fruits and vegetables that you enjoy, so you're going to include those. If you don't, you got time to try new things. But right now, we're basically having you set up your eating plan and take ownership of it, because you're making the choices here, which is cool. It's very empowering when you look at it that way. So I want you to have your structure set up. In addition to that, not part of your regular meal frequency, I want you to set aside a time each day to eat whatever that food is. Well, what if it's a large pepperoni pizza? Well, every day eat a large pepperoni pizza. But eventually, that pepperoni pizza is going to go from being a large to a medium. That might be between day 1 and day 2, or by day 4. I don't know. Eventually, it's small. And eventually, you're just getting it by the slice. And then eventually, you don't need it every day because you're like, I've had a lot of pizza. like I'm good for a while. And that I'm good for a while is actually what you want. Because think about it. Anytime that you've had, anytime that you've done cheat meals or cheat days, think about that anticipation. Think about what that feeling is like when you take that first bite. Think of the guilt and shame that comes at the end of the day or at the end of the meal or a couple minutes in. When you seemingly have kind of like just started to mindlessly eat, which, by the way, was another thing that the food manufacturer was wanting you to do. Our brains are wild with the right chemical or with the right combination of fat, sugar, and salt. Do some crazy things, right? What would you do for a Klondike bar? But I mean, but the whole thing on this is if we're setting up this entire environment where it is not part of our actual eating plan. We're not trying to fit the calories, right? We're not trying to like make this fit. We're eating what we're eating, and then we're going above and beyond because the main focus that we're doing right now is we want to get a handle on this big, hairy trigger food that we have. But the other thing that this really starts to at least give you a different perspective on is the calories and making it fit, because you're not eating this food for calories. You're eating this food to get control over it and get to a point where you can take it or leave it. So I'll give you an update on my trigger foods. When I go and get pizza, I get, if I'm eating it on my own, and I'll tell you, depending on how many, because I have a calorie range that I try to stay within that's between usually 2,800 and 3,000 calories a day. I had a day where I didn't end up eating a lot of food. It was just the way that the day went. I had a pretty tough workout, and I know that this one pizza, like, I can get an entire, like what their small is. It's not an individual, it's 8 slices, but they're small slices because it's a small pizza. And it's roughly about 1,500 calories. Not a lot of sugar, a lot of fat, obviously, fair amount of carbs. But yeah, I like it. It tastes good. I don't eat it often, but it's like it's one of those things. When I want calories fast, it's what I'll do. Now, compared to what I used to do, and this has been, good Lord, this has been a long time ago. I used to run on the weekends. This was actually college, is when this was. And what I would do after I would run, because I'd run a couple miles, and I would always celebrate by going to this other pizza place. And I liked they had a really hot, like it was a spicy chicken pizza. It was really good. It was a mariachi chicken pizza, is what it was. And this was like thin, greasy, um, crispy crust. Oh man, it was so good. But like I would drive past it when I go to, like, when I'd be leaving from where I was running. So I would like pick one up, and that was my Saturday. I'd get this, I'd get a diet Dr. Pepper, and I just eat the entire thing. Now, eventually, here's the thing: they have smaller sizes of that pizza, so I would get that. Um, but when I was doing that once a week, I'd anticipate it. I'm like, Saturday, I get the pizza. I got to get that run out of the way. I'm gonna go eat the pizza. Um, ice cream. There's an ice cream shop close to me that is my favorite, like, ice cream shop to go to. I go there. It depends on if I have a gift card or not, but normally I only go there probably once a month, if that. Um, and then I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. The cookies. So one of the things, and if you guys follow my content as a whole, I have been testing. I've been trying to make a really amazing chocolate chip cookie. This is something that I will be will be available eventually locally, and we'll see what happens from there. But as I was getting this recipe down, it had been a while since I'd really been like, I used to be able to crush chocolate chip cookies. Um, and the emotional tie-in for that for me was like when I was a kid and you would go to the mall and get like to me, all the cookie shops had kind of the same cookies, the same type. Um, but like I love those mall cookies. And you could kind of like those tear and bake ones were kind of like that. So like I could at one point I could eat an entire package of those in one day. Get really sick off of it, feel kind of some kind of way about it, but and I could do that on a regular basis. But when I started making when I started making this cookie, trying to like perfect this recipe, I was having a blast because like I'm taste testing. I'm making batches of cookies. I would give some away, but then like I'd have a bunch of them left. I'm like, well, these can't go to waste. But like, and it was funny because after making 3 or 4 batches of these really super dense cookies, I was like, eh, I'm good. Like I don't need them for a while. So, and then what I will do, I mentioned the mall cookies. So, like, if I'm ever walking around a mall, which occasionally happens, there's still actually some successful malls here, which is kind of cool. Um, I'll get a cookie when I'm at the mall, like a chocolate chip cookie, usually. But yeah, and the other thing is with me in that case, focusing in on just the chocolate chip cookie. If I was like eating a variety cookies as a whole, like I don't know, there might be an. I think if you're eating a cookie every single day, you're going to get tired of it. Yeah, I think that you will. But if you're, but I think if you just pick one basic, in this case, pick one basic cookie, I think that worked better for me. But the reason I tell you that is like, there's levels to doing this stuff. There's levels with every single food. We can get into some really interesting habits with the volume that we eat and the frequency of which we eat something. But a lot of times we feel like we're helpless and out of control. You can be more in control than you probably think and feel. What I will say is give yourself a lot of grace and a lot of patience when you're working on this, because you're trying to reestablish a relationship and control or change the relationship with this food and take ownership and take responsibility for it. It's going to take time. And yes, I do think we have relationship with certain foods. And I think the people that say there is no such thing as a relationship with food, they probably got some really interesting relationships with food that they try not to talk about, that they're ashamed of. Because again, guilt and shame is something that the food and fitness industry have really done a number on with us. So, but anyway, that's my perspective as somebody that's spent a couple of decades in the fitness space and also has spent about as long in the marketing and advertising space. So that's kind of how that rolls. But that's what I have for you. So if you're still watching on YouTube, thank you. If you like what you're seeing, go ahead and subscribe and then share the video. And YouTube's going to like recommend a video for you to watch. Check that out if you want, but don't spend too much time going down the rabbit hole, please. If you're listening on the podcast, thank you. If you like what you're hearing, please go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. And then share the episode with somebody you think that would need to hear it. So that's what I have. Oh, rate and review. I don't think I mentioned that after you subscribe. So for the podcast. So that's what I have for you. So thank you as always for listening and watching. And I'll talk to you again real soon.